Can you believe they bulldozed my family's farmland for some highfalutin community garden, completely clueless that I held documents proving I owned the entire county? What would you do if you stumbled upon the ultimate power to make those entitled HOA neighbors pay for their arrogance? I'm dying to know, where are you reading this from? It all started with a jolt. The sharp slam of a car door yanked me out of my afternoon nap on the porch. Blinking against the sunlight, I spotted her, a woman strutting up my gravel driveway in a crisp white pantsuit, her high heels sinking just a bit with every determined step. My old farm dog, Bruno, barely mustered a half-hearted woof before flopping back down, clearly unimpressed. Who was this woman marching onto my land like she owned the place? "Excuse me, you there," she called, her voice sharp as she waved a bright yellow piece of paper like a battle flag. "Are you the owner of this property?" I stood slowly, my back creaking from a long morning spent wrestling with irrigation pipes. "Yes, ma'am," I said, dusting off my hands. "James Miller. My family's owned this farm for 3 generations. How can I help you?" I kept my tone polite, but inside I was already bristling. Something about her screamed trouble. She gave me a once-over, her nose wrinkling at my mud-stained jeans and scuffed work boots. "I'm Karen Whitfield," she announced, like it was supposed to mean something. "President of the Sunny Meadows Homeowners Association. This is an official notice of violation." She thrust that yellow paper at me with a flourish, like she was serving a royal decree. I took it, my brow furrowing in genuine confusion. Violation? My 600 acres of farmland had been here forever, long before the shiny new Sunny Meadows development popped up across the road last year, with its McMansions and manicured lawns. "Violation, ma'am?" I asked, scratching my head. "I'm not part of your HOA. Never have been." Karen's perfectly lined lips curled into something she probably thought was a smile, but it looked more like a smirk to me. "Your eyesore of a barn," she said, pointing across my property, "is clearly visible from several of our premium view properties. It's decreasing our home values by an estimated 15%. Can you imagine the nerve of that thing just sitting there, ruining our views?" I glanced at my grandfather's barn, its red paint peeling in spots but still standing proud. That barn was a piece of my family's soul, sturdy as ever, doing its job just fine. "This barn's been here since 1937, I said, my voice tightening. "And now it's 2025, Mr. Miller," she shot back, her eyes glinting. "Times change. We expect it to be painted or better yet removed within 30 days. She tapped the paper in my hand. "It's all outlined there, along with the potential fines. Don't say we didn't warn you." My temper flared, hot and sharp, but I forced myself to stay calm. "I think there's been a mistake," I said, slow and steady. "Your HOA rules don't apply to my property. Never have. Never will." Karen's face hardened, her smile vanishing like a storm cloud rolling in. "We'll see about that," she snapped. Then, almost as an afterthought, she pointed to my east field, where my winter wheat was just starting to peek through the soil. "By the way, what exactly are you growing over there?" "Winter wheat," I said, wondering why she cared. "Same as always." She tapped something into her phone, her fingers flying. "Interesting," she muttered. "The board will want to know about this." Without another word, she spun on her heel and click-clacked back to her gleaming SUV, leaving a trail of dust in her wake. I stood there, dumbfounded, watching her drive off. Then I looked down at the violation notice. It had an official-looking stamp and threatened a $200 daily fine, $200 a day. At the bottom, a sticky note in her neat handwriting read, "We should discuss the east section. Call me K." I crumpled the paper and shoved it into my pocket, my blood boiling. These city folks, moving to the edge of town, always thought they could push us farmers around. Did they think I'd just roll over? I had real work to do and no time for their nonsense. That evening, as I stirred a pot of chili for dinner, my phone rang, shattering the quiet. It was Rick Thompson, my childhood buddy, now the county clerk. "Jimmy, you sitting down?" he asked, his voice tight with stress. "What's up?" I teased, trying to lighten the mood. "Snake in your office again?" I chuckled, remembering the time a little garden snake had sent Rick leaping onto his desk like a scared kid. "I wish," he said, no trace of a laugh. "Listen, something weird just happened. Karen Whitfield from that new development came in with some documents about your east field. She was filing permits. I froze, the ladle slipping in my hand. "Permits for what?" I demanded. "A community garden, swimming pool, and tennis courts," Rick said, his words hitting like a punch. "Jimmy, she's claiming that section of your land actually belongs to their development? Says it was never properly surveyed when your grandfather bought the adjoining parcels? Can you believe that? That's ridiculous," I nearly shouted. "I have the deeds in my filing cabinet right now." "Well, she had papers too," Rick said, his voice low. "Something looks off, but they were stamped and filed correctly. They're scheduled to start clearing land tomorrow morning." "Tomorrow?" I gasped, my heart slamming against my ribs. "They can't just bulldoze my wheat. I've got almost 50 acres planted there." "I tried to slow it down," Rick said, "but she had all the right signatures." "Something's not right, Jimmy. You better find those deeds tonight." I hung up, my mind racing. How could this be happening? I rushed to my office, really just a cluttered corner of the living room where I kept the farm paperwork. My hands shook as I yanked open the metal filing cabinet my dad had organized so carefully before he passed. I flipped through the folders, my breath catching until I found it. The original deed from 1937, along with the additional parcels my grandfather bought in the 40s and 50s. There they were, proof of my family's legacy. Spreading the papers across the kitchen table, I studied the property lines under the dim light. Everything looked right, just as it had been for decades. The east field was clearly ours, no question about it. But then I noticed something, a tiny detail that made my stomach twist. The newest survey, done 5 years ago when I'd briefly considered selling a small parcel but backed out, showed a slight discrepancy in the eastern border, just 15 feet off from the original survey. I'd brushed it off at the time, figuring modern equipment was just more precise. Could Karen have latched onto this to claim my land? Was that even possible? I grabbed my phone to call Rick back, but it went straight to voicemail. Desperate, I dialed the sheriff's office. "Sheriff Davis speaking," came the familiar drawl. "Sheriff, it's James Miller out at Miller Farm," I said, my voice shaking. "I think someone's planning to illegally bulldoze part of my wheat field tomorrow morning." There was a long pause, too long. Jimmy," Sheriff Davis said. "Yeah, I got a call about that today. Sounds like there's some property line dispute with that new development." "It's not a dispute," I snapped, my patience fraying. "They're trying to steal my land." "Now, Jimmy, let's not throw around accusations," he said, his tone maddeningly calm. "Tell you what, I'll come out first thing tomorrow and make sure everything's legal before any machinery moves." I thanked him, hanging up with a flicker of relief. Sheriff Davis had gone to school with my dad. They'd been friends for years. Surely he'd make sure things were handled fairly, right? But deep down, a nagging doubt gnawed at me. Why had he sounded so hesitant? As the sun sank below the horizon, painting my fields in shades of gold, I sat on the porch, staring at the glowing lights in the big houses across the road. What was Karen really after? The east field wasn't even visible from their precious development. Then it hit me like a thunderbolt: water rights. My property controlled access to Carson Creek, a lifeline that ran through the back of my land. I'd heard folks at the general store grumbling all summer about water pressure problems in Sunny Meadows. Were they scheming to get their hands on my creek? Could they be that brazen? Sleep was impossible that night. Instead, I dove into the stacks of paperwork my grandfather and father had left behind, hunting for answers. around 3:00 a.m. Bleary-eyed and wired on coffee, I found something that made my heart skip. A county map from 1962, yellowed and fragile, showing that my family hadn't just owned this farm, but most of the land in a 30-mile radius, including the very ground where Sunny Meadows now stood. We'd sold off parcels over the years as farming got tougher, but what else might we still hold? Water rights? Mineral rights? Access easements? My mind spun with possibilities. What secrets were buried in these old papers? I must have dozed off at the kitchen table, surrounded by documents, because the next thing I knew, the roar of heavy machinery snapped me awake. Dawn was barely breaking, and I stumbled outside in my socks, my heart pounding. There they were, 3 massive bulldozers lumbering down the access road toward my east field, tearing up the earth without a care. Leading the charge was Karen's shiny SUV, followed by a parade of cars sporting Sunny Meadows HOA logos. Where was Sheriff Davis? He'd promised to be here. Had he lied to me? Panic surged through me as I watched those machines roll closer, their blades glinting in the early light. My wheat, my family's blood and sweat was in their path, and I was running out of time. How could they do this? How could they think they'd get away with it? I grabbed my phone, fumbling to call the sheriff again, but before I could hit dial, the first bulldozer smashed through my fence line, ripping into my wheat field like it was nothing. My chest tightened, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just an attack on my land, it was an attack on everything my family had built. But I wasn't about to let them win. Not today, not ever. My heart was pounding as I grabbed my phone to call Sheriff Davis again. Where was he when I needed him? But before I could even hit dial, the deafening crash of a bulldozer smashing through my fence line stopped me cold. It tore into my wheat field like a monster, ripping up everything my family had poured our souls into. How could they do this? The roar of engines jolted me awake at 5:30 a.m. And let me tell you, those weren't the familiar hum of tractors. These were heavy, menacing machines, growling with a purpose that sent my heart racing. I leapt out of bed, panic surging through me, and fumbled to throw on my boots, not even bothering to change out of my pajamas. Something was horribly wrong. Could this really be happening? I raced outside, the cold morning air hitting my face. And there they were, 3 massive yellow bulldozers tearing through my wheat field. Like it was nothing. The golden stalks, carefully planted by my family, the ones meant to feed hundreds of people, were being shredded and shoved into piles like worthless trash. My stomach plummeted. How could anyone be so heartless? Those crops weren't just plants. They were our legacy, our livelihood. Hey, stop, I shouted, sprinting toward the machines, waving my arms like a madman. My voice felt so small against the roaring engines. Did they even see me? The operators didn't flinch, their focus locked on destruction. Then I spotted them, standing smugly at the edge of my property, Karen Whitfield and 5 others, all decked out in matching blue Sunny Meadows HOA polo shirts, clutching their fancy travel mugs like they were at a picnic. They sipped their coffee, watching my field get obliterated as if it were some kind of twisted morning entertainment. Who did they think they were? I stormed over, mud splashing onto my pajama pants, my blood boiling hotter with every step. What the hell do you think you're doing? I yelled, my voice cracking with fury. This is my land. You can't just destroy it. Karen turned slowly, her perfect blonde bob not moving an inch, like she was posing for a magazine cover. She tilted her head, her eyes glinting with fake surprise. Really? On my own property? Good morning, she said, her voice dripping with sweetness, as if we were chatting over coffee at a cafe. We're finally addressing the neighborhood eyesore situation. The board voted unanimously. Didn't you know? I jabbed a finger toward the bulldozers, my hands shaking with rage. Tell them to stop right now. Those are my crops, my family's blood and sweat. Karen sighed, like I was some clueless kid who couldn't grasp basic math. Actually, she said, her tone infuriatingly calm. According to county records, this section was never properly registered to your family. It's been designated as community land for decades. Surprising, isn't it? She pulled a sleek folder from her designer tote bag and flipped it open, revealing a property map with bold red lines slicing my land in half. My land split like it was nothing. That's impossible, I snapped, my voice trembling with disbelief. My grandfather bought this entire 600 acres in 1937. I have the deeds, Karen deeds that prove you're dead wrong. Well, these are the official records, she said with a smug smile, snapping the folder shut before I could get a good look. We're creating something beautiful here, a community garden with raised beds, a meditation labyrinth, even a koi pond. Property values will rise at least 8% once this mess is gone. Won't that be lovely? The man next to her, Doug Wilson, I recognized him from those glossy Sunny Meadows marketing brochures, nodded eagerly, practically bouncing with excitement. We've already sold sponsorship benches to 15 families, he chimed in. Construction starts next week. It's going to be a game changer. My hands shook as I yanked out my phone, dialing the sheriff's office with fumbling fingers. While it rang, I watched in horror as the bulldozers churned deeper into my field, each second destroying more of my crops, my family's future. You can't do this! I shouted over the deafening noise, my voice raw. This is theft, destruction of private property. Don't you get that? It's progress, Karen corrected, turning to murmur something to a woman scribbling on an iPad. They all laughed, their giggles cutting through me like a knife. Progress? Was she serious? Sheriff Davis finally picked up on the fourth ring, and I poured out my desperation. They're destroying my crops right now, Sheriff. I need officers here immediately, please. There was a long, agonizing pause on the line, and my gut twisted. I understand you're upset, he said, his voice cautious, almost distant. But from what I'm seeing in the system, this appears to be a civil property dispute. We can't intervene without a court order. A civil dispute? Was he kidding me? What? I gasped, my voice breaking. They're trespassing and destroying my property? How is that not a crime? According to the records I'm looking at, Sheriff Davis said. Slowly. The property lines are unclear. I'd suggest contacting your lawyer. His hesitation sent a chill down my spine. Sheriff Davis had known my family for decades. Heck, he'd gone fishing with my dad. Why was he acting like I was a stranger now? What was going on? I'll come by later to take a report, he added, then hung up before I could argue, leaving me staring at my phone in disbelief. When I looked up, Karen was watching me. Her lips curled into a satisfied smile. She knew exactly how that call had gone. Could she have gotten to him somehow? Everything okay? She asked, her voice oozing fake concern. The sheriff is coming, I lied, trying to sound confident, but my heart was sinking fast. Her smile didn't budge. Wonderful, she chirped. He can see our permits. She handed me a stack of official-looking papers, all neatly stamped and approved by the county last month. We tried to tell you about this at the neighborhood meeting, but you never attend, do you? Because I don't live in your damn neighborhood, I shouted, my face burning with anger. I've lived on this farm my entire life. My grandfather built that barn with his own hands in 1932, and now you're saying it's pulling down your property values? I glared at Doug, who was checking his watch like this was just another errand. We have another meeting at 9, Doug said to Karen. Will you be okay here? Perfectly fine, she assured him, her voice smooth as silk as the other board members piled into their cars and drove off, leaving a cloud of dust behind. Karen turned back to me, her eyes cold. I understand change is difficult, James, but progress is inevitable. The suburbs are growing, and frankly, farming just doesn't fit the community vision anymore. Don't you see that? I stood there, stunned, as a bulldozer plowed through the irrigation system my father had installed 30 years ago. Pipes burst, spraying water into the air like a fountain of my family's broken dreams. My chest ached. How could they be so cruel? That's enough for today, Karen called to the operators, glancing at her watch like she was wrapping up a casual errand. We'll continue tomorrow. The bulldozers backed up, their tracks carving deep wounds in my ruined field. 6 acres of wheat, nearly a fifth of my year's income gone. Just like that. My knees felt weak as I stared at the destruction. This wasn't just land, it was my heritage, torn apart without a second thought. This isn't over, I said, my voice trembling with a mix of rage and heartbreak. Karen placed a hand on my shoulder, and I jerked away, repulsed by her touch. It actually is, she said, her tone icy. But we're willing to be reasonable. If you voluntarily surrender the remaining disputed acreage, we won't bill you for today's land clearing services. Generous, right? She turned and sauntered to her car, pausing to oversee workers hammering a massive sign into my soil, future home of Sunny Meadows Community Gardens and Wellness Center. The words burned into my brain. How dare they claim my land for their nonsense? As Karen's SUV peeled away, I heard the screech of tires and saw Rick Thompson's truck speeding down my driveway. He jumped out, his face pale with shock, his eyes wide as he took in the wreckage. I just heard, he gasped. I came as soon as I could. This is insane, Jimmy. How could they possibly get permits for this? Someone at the county office helped them, I said, a cold realization settling in my gut like a stone. But who? And why would they betray us like this? Rick shook his head, his jaw tight. I don't know, but there's something else. On my way here, I saw surveyors at your north field. They had Sunny Meadows logos on their truck. My blood ran cold. North field too? They're not stopping with just this field, are they? I whispered, fear creeping into my voice. We need to figure out how they falsified those property records, Rick said, his eyes blazing with determination. This isn't just about your farm anymore, Jimmy. If they can do this to you, they could do it to anyone. Back in my house, I marched straight to my grandfather's old study, my heart pounding with purpose. Behind a faded painting of our farm, there was a small safe I hadn't touched in years, its lock dusty from neglect. I opened it, my fingers trembling, and found the original property documents, deeds, surveys, maps, all dating back to when my great-grandfather first settled this county. As I spread them out, what I found sent a surge of fury and determination through me. Karen and her HOA cronies had no idea who they were messing with. By this time tomorrow, they'd regret ever stepping foot on my land, mark my words. Sleep was a lost cause that night. The image of those bulldozers ripping up my wheat field played on repeat in my mind, each loop fueling my anger. At dawn, I threw on my clothes and called Rick, my voice steady despite the fire in my chest. I need every document on the Oak Ridge Estates development, I told him. Birth certificates, building permits, everything. That could take weeks, Rick warned, sounding skeptical. I need it by noon, I insisted. No more waiting, this was war. 3 hours later, I was buried in county records at Rick's office, surrounded by stacks of dusty files. My coffee had gone cold, but I didn't care. My hands trembled with urgency as I flipped through folders from the 1920s, searching for the truth. Found something. Rick called from his computer, his voice sharp with excitement. The original land survey from when your great-grandfather parceled out the county. And look who signed off on it. His words hung in the air, heavy with promise. What did he find? Could this be the key to stopping Karen and her schemes once and for all? My heart raced like a runaway train when I saw the signature at the bottom of that old survey. Judge William Whitfield, Karen's great-great-grandfather. Rick's voice was grim as he confirmed he knew exactly where the property lines were supposed to be. Could it really be true? Had Karen's own ancestor laid the groundwork for my family's rightful claim, only for her to twist it against me now? My phone buzzed, snapping me out of my shock, a text that hit like a punch to the gut. The HOA was holding an emergency meeting tonight to discuss Phase 2 of their so-called community project. More of my land was at stake. How much more did they think they could take? I rushed home, my mind a whirlwind, and climbed to the attic, where dust motes danced in the dim light. There, I dragged out a heavy trunk, its hinges creaking with age, stuffed to the brim with my grandfather's papers. My fingers fumbled until I found it, a leather folder, its gold lettering glinting county water rights. I read it 3 times, my breath catching each time. The water lines feeding the entire Oak Ridge estate snaked right through my property. My family had granted an easement, but with strict conditions they were violating. Could this be the key to stopping them? My hands shook as I dialed my old college roommate, Sandra, now a sharp lawyer in the city. "How fast can you get here?" I asked, my voice tight with urgency. "What's wrong, James?" she replied, concern lacing her words. "I'm about to go to war with 200 angry homeowners," I exclaimed. Was I really ready for this fight? That evening, I stepped into the Sunny Meadows HOA meeting room, and it was packed to the rafters, tension, thick enough to choke on. I spotted Karen at the front, cool as a cucumber in her crisp blue blazer with that smug HOA logo, her blonde hair styled so perfectly it looked like it was glued in place. She tapped her manicured nails, impatient for the crowd to hush. I slipped into a back row seat, my heart pounding. Nobody noticed me, thank God. Was I really about to take them all on? "As you can see from these beautiful renderings," Karen announced, pointing to vibrant posters like she was unveiling a masterpiece, Phase 2 will transform another 10 acres of that unsightly farmland into our new tennis complex and walking trails. Isn't it exciting? The crowd clapped politely, but I felt my blood simmer unsightly. My family's legacy? A man in golf clothes stood up, his brow furrowed. What about the farmer who lives there? Won't he complain? Karen waved a dismissive hand, her smile tight. Our legal team has confirmed that land was improperly registered decades ago. It rightfully belongs to our community now. Improperly registered? How dare she lie so blatantly? My blood boiled, but I forced my face to stay calm, biding my time like a hunter waiting for the perfect shot. Karen pressed on, her voice syrupy sweet. With the tennis complex, our property value should soar by at least 15%. We've already hired the bulldozers for next Monday. Won't that be a game changer? When she finally opened the floor for comments, I stood, my legs steady despite the storm inside me, and made my way to the microphone. The room fell silent, all eyes on me. Could I pull this off? "Good evening," I said, my voice clear. "I'm the farmer whose land you bulldozed yesterday and whose land you're planning to steal come Monday." Karen's smile tightened, her eyes narrowing. "Sir, this is a private HOA meeting," she snapped, but I wasn't backing down, not now. "Before you continue with your plans," I said, cool as ice, "let me introduce myself properly. My name is James Miller. My great-grandfather founded this county in 1901. Our family has farmed here for over a century, longer than any of you have called this place home." I opened my folder with deliberate care and placed my first document on the projector, its yellowed edges glowing under the light. This is the original land survey, signed by Judge William Whitfield in 1922. Does that name ring a bell, Karen? Her face flushed crimson, and whispers rippled through the board members. "Gotcha! Your great-grandfather personally verified our property lines," I continued, my voice steady but burning with purpose. "So why are you claiming my land was improperly registered? Care to explain that?" I switched to the next document, my heart pounding with the weight of what I was revealing. "Our family trust still owns the mineral and water rights to every inch of land in a 30-mile radius, including under your homes." The crowd murmured, nervous energy crackling through the room. Did they realize what this meant? "That's simply not possible," Karen snapped, her composure cracking. "Our development has all proper. I've spent a day with county officials." I cut in, my voice still even but sharp as a blade. "It seems your HOA has been operating without proper authorization for years. Your water supply? It runs through my land on easements that can be revoked with just 30 days' notice. How's that for a wake-up call? An older man shot to his feet, his face pale. Are you threatening to cut off our water? He demanded. I'm stating facts, I replied, locking eyes with him. Just like it's a fact that your development was built on a conditional land use agreement requiring a 200-acre agricultural buffer zone, the very land you bulldozed yesterday and plan to bulldoze Monday. Didn't think anyone would notice, did you? Karen stepped forward, her face beet red. We have documentation, forged documentation. A voice boomed from the door, and every head turned. Sheriff Davis strode in, followed by Rick and 3 county officials, their faces grim. Rick hefted a large cardboard box, labeled Evidence. My heart leapt. This meeting is now part of a formal county investigation, the sheriff declared. We have reason to believe property records were deliberately falsified. Chaos erupted. Homeowners shouted questions, their voices a frantic cacophony. Karen tried to regain control, but she was drowning in the uproar. Doug, the HOA vice president, a tall guy with a smug grin, grabbed the microphone. This is ridiculous. We followed every legal process, he barked, but I could see the sweat on his brow. Sandra stepped forward from behind the sheriff, her lawyer's gaze cutting like a laser. Then you won't mind explaining why the permit applications for your community garden project were backdated and signed by a county clerk who retired 3 years ago, she said, her voice ringing with authority. The room gasped. Did they really think they could hide that? Or why, Sandra continued, relentless, the property maps submitted to the county don't match the official surveys from any year since 1937. All eyes swung to Karen, who was frantically texting on her phone, her fingers trembling. Caught red-handed. A woman clutching a baby stood, her voice shaking. Are we going to lose our homes over this? I looked at her, my heart softening. That's not my goal, I said gently. But the destruction of my family's land has to stop, and the people responsible need to be held accountable. Don't you agree? Karen bolted, pushing through the crowd toward the exit, but Sheriff Davis nodded to a deputy who blocked the door like a wall. Mrs. Whitfield, the sheriff said, his voice firm, we'll need you to stay for questioning. Oh, how the mighty had fallen. I gathered my documents, watching as frightened homeowners swarmed the board members, demanding answers. This wasn't just about my land anymore. These people had been lied to, manipulated. As I turned to leave, Doug grabbed my arm, his grip tight. You have no idea who you're dealing with, he hissed. Karen's husband is a state senator. This little stunt will cost you everything. I gently pried his hand off, meeting his glare. I'm not the one who bulldozed someone else's property based on forged documents, Doug. Are you sure you want to go down with her? Outside, the night air was cool against my flushed face. I leaned against my truck, exhaustion crashing over me like a wave. This victory felt good, but fleeting Karen had connections, money, power. The real fight was just beginning, wasn't it? She'd come back swinging harder than ever. My phone rang, shattering the quiet. It was Rick, his voice urgent. You need to get back to your farm right now, Jimmy. Something's happening at your house. My heart lurched. What now? I jumped into my truck and sped home, the road blurring as my pulse hammered. Cresting the hill overlooking my property, I saw flashing lights, fire trucks, police cars, and, in the distance, orange flames licking up the side of my century-old barn. They'd hit back faster than I'd ever imagined. How could they stoop so low? The next morning, I woke to the eerie buzz of a drone over my farmhouse. Grabbing my binoculars, I spotted Karen herself at the edge of my property, controlling it like a spy on a mission. She was mapping more of my land. Unbelievable. For 3 straight weeks after that county meeting, the Sunny Meadows HOA attacked me from every angle, like wolves circling their prey. They froze me out of local businesses, can you believe it? The grocery store owner, a guy I'd known for years, suddenly couldn't order my favorite coffee. The hardware store claimed they were out of the tractor parts I needed, their excuses flimsier than tissue paper. But I wasn't going to let them win, not after what they did to my wheat field. My family's legacy was worth fighting for, and I'd be damned if I let Karen and her cronies take another inch. Did they really think they could break me? As I drove into town that morning, the weight of every stare burned into me, folks gawking like I was some kind of outlaw. A flyer flapping on the community board caught my eye, its bold letters screaming, "Emergency home meeting, addressing the farmland menace." My farm, the place where I grew food that fed half the county, called a menace? How could they twist my family's legacy into something so vile? My chest tightened, but I pushed through the hurt, determined to fight back. "Don't let it get to you, Jimmy," Rick said, thrusting a steaming coffee into my hands as I stepped into his office at the county building. His eyes were bloodshot, his desk a mess of papers. "I've been digging through old records all night, man. You won't believe what I found." He unfurled a yellowed map across his desk, its edges brittle with age, and pointed to my grandfather's signature scrawled in the corner. My heart skipped. Could this be it? "According to this," Rick said, jabbing at the fine print, "your grandfather included a special clause when he sold the original plots where Oak Ridge Estates now stands. No development can alter the natural watershed. The second they bulldozed your field, they broke that clause wide open. Can you believe their nerve?" Before I could respond, my phone rang, shrill and urgent. It was Maria Gonzalez, an Oak Ridge resident I'd met at the farmer's market, her voice trembling with panic. "They've cut off our water, James," she cried. "The HOA is claiming there's contamination from your farm. We've got kids, elderly folks, no water at all." My stomach churned. How low could they sink? "That's impossible," I shot back, gripping the phone. "Your water comes straight from the county's supply. There's no way my farm's to blame." "Not according to the notice they slapped on our doors," Maria said. Her words rushed. "It says, we have to buy bottled water from the HOA office, $20 a gallon, until the so-called contamination's fixed." $20 a gallon? Were they serious? I hung up, my blood boiling like a summer storm. Karen wasn't just gunning for me anymore, she was using me as a scapegoat to fleece her own neighbors. How could she sleep at night, profiting off their fear? When I got home, my jaw-dropped surveyors were crawling over another section of my property, their equipment glinting in the sun. Doug Wilson, the new HOA president, stood there with his arms crossed, smirking like he owned the place. Karen had stepped down, but I'd bet my last dollar she was still pulling the strings. Who did they think they were fooling? "You're trespassing," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the fire in my chest. "We have new documentation," Doug insisted, flanked by 2 security guards sporting Sunny Meadows patches. "This parcel was rezoned in 1997. It belongs to the community now." Rezoned? What kind of lie was that? I studied their faces' shifty eyes, fake confidence. These weren't real surveyors, they were HOA board members playing dress-up. "I'll give you exactly 1 minute to get off my land," I said, my tone cold as steel. "Or what?" Doug smirked, leaning in. "Your threats were recorded at the meeting. The sheriff's on our side now." Oh, was he now? Little did they know, I'd been recording too, every smug word. Every veiled threat they'd tossed at me that night was safely tucked away. Did they really think I'd come unprepared? Later that day, a local news van rolled up to my farm, tires crunching on the gravel. I'd called in a favor from an old school friend turned reporter, and she was ready to blow this wide open. "We're investigating reports that the Meadows HOA has cut off water to its own residents," she said, her camera crew already filming, and claims of illegal land seizure. My heart pounded. This was my chance. I led her through the bulldozed field, the earth still scarred and raw, showed her the fake surveyor stakes, and laid out the most damning evidence: water bills from Oak Ridge residents compared to actual county rates. The HOA was robbing them blind. The story aired at 6:00 p.m., and by 7 my phone was buzzing nonstop. Residents weren't mad at me. They were furious at Karen and her HOA cronies. Could this be the turning point? The next morning, I stood at my kitchen window, coffee forgotten, watching county water trucks rumble into Oak Ridge Estates. Rick had pulled strings to get emergency water delivered to the families hit by the HOA scheme, bless him. Then, something odd caught my eye. A moving truck parked at Karen's house. Were they packing up? Had our pressure finally broken them? My heart lifted for a moment. Could we really be winning? But that hope crashed hard that afternoon when a lawsuit notice landed in my hands, accusing my farm of causing environmental damage and tanking property values. $2 million in damages, and they had the gall to demand it immediate seizure of all my land. I sat at my kitchen table, hands shaking as I read the words, each one a dagger. This wasn't about a community garden anymore. Karen and her crew wanted everything. Then I spotted it. The attorney's firm was Whitfield Holdings, LLC, Karen's own company. She wasn't just the HOA president. She was raking in profits from this fight. How deep did her greed run? I called Rick, my voice urgent. I need access to every property transaction in Oak Ridge Estates for the past 5 years now. What we uncovered left us speechless, our jaws practically hitting the floor. Karen and 3 board members had been snapping up properties at dirt cheap prices, targeting homeowners who broke HOA rules they'd crafted to force people out. And that community garden? It wasn't just a jab at me. It sat right above a natural spring, the most valuable water source in our drought-stricken county. They weren't after beauty, they were after power. I called an emergency town meeting at the county courthouse, my heart racing as every Oak Ridge resident, plus farmers and townsfolk from across the county, packed the room. Standing before them, I laid it all bare: the water price gouging, the property scheme, and the big one, the water rights grab. Your HOA's been charging you triple the normal water rates for years, I said, projecting their bills next to county rates on the wall. They blamed county fees, but that money's funneled straight into board members' companies. The crowd gasped. Did they see the betrayal now? Karen and Doug tried to shout me down, their faces twisted with panic. But the evidence was undeniable. There's more, I pressed, pointing to a property map. The true lines show your garages, built 5 years ago, are actually on my land. I never said a word because I believe in being neighborly. Can you say the same about them? The room erupted. Homeowners turning on Karen and Doug, their voices a furious roar. Justice was waking up. And the biggest lie of all, I said as the noise quieted, is that this is about property values or community gardens. It's about this. I flashed an underground water survey map on the wall. They want the spring under my field. In our county, whoever controls water controls everything. Karen's face went ghostly white. She hadn't known I had those surveys. Caught at last. The meeting dissolved into angry shouts, and Sheriff Davis stood, his voice cutting through the chaos. Based on the evidence presented, I'm opening an official investigation into the Sunny Meadows HOA board. Karen lunged for the door, but 2 deputies blocked her path like stone walls. I caught Rick's eye across the room and gave a slight nod. The trap was sprung. But as I walked to my truck that night, a shadow moved in the darkness, watching me. This fight wasn't over, not by a long shot. What was coming next? The courtroom fell silent as the judge's gavel slammed down, each bang echoing like victory. In light of the evidence, I find the Sunny Meadows HOA board guilty of document fraud and illegal land seizure. Karen's face turned beet red as she leapt up, shrieking, "This is ridiculous. Do you know who my husband is? Really, Karen, that's your defense?" The judge shut her down cold. "Mrs. Whitfield, you're facing criminal charges and a $50,000 fine. One more word, and I'll add contempt of court." I walked out, news cameras swarming me, their lights blinding. My story had gone viral overnight. Can you imagine? How does it feel to win against the HOA that tried to steal your family farm? A reporter asked, shoving a mic in my face. This isn't just my victory, I said, my voice strong. It's for every homeowner they've bullied with fake rules and hidden fees. A week later, flyers hit every Oak Ridge mailbox, exposing Karen's secret luxury condo purchases with HOA funds. By evening, neighbors were demanding a new board election power to the people. The new HOA president, Maria, knocked on my door the next day, her eyes earnest. "We found out the truth about the water bill scam," she said. "We want to make things right." 3 months later, I stood watching neighborhood kids plant sunflowers along the property line, a living fence we designed together, bright and hopeful. Karen drove by in her moving truck, her glare icy as her house sold for half its value. "Good riddance." "Your grandfather would be proud," Rick said, clapping my shoulder as we stood side by side. "You didn't just save the farm, Jimmy, you taught an entire community what it means to be real neighbors." My heart swelled. Had I really done all that?